Need to get ready for Wake Forest on Saturday. Chris Graham here on the podcast. But first, we'll recap the Pitt game in great excruciating detail. Um, 74-63 loss for Virginia in that one. And I didn't see it coming. I did a radio interview literally minutes before tip with a station down in Lynchburg, and among the thoughts I offered there, and this shows how much I know, right? Oh yeah, this will be a rock fight. I think the game will be in the 50s, maybe around 60. These two teams will, play pretty tough, and no, that was not what happened. Pitt. It was pointed out to me. I mean, I knew this, but someone pointed it out after the game. Oh, they had basically a week to prepare for this one, and so yeah, I mean, Pitt did, and you get that advantage one time a season in the ACC with an odd number of teams. There's at least this year. So this is the last year of that being the case. One team has to sit out either a midweek game or a weekend game. This was the week where Pitt missed its midweek game. So I think they played last Wednesday and then they played Virginia Tuesday night. So Jeff Capel and crew could get a little bit of rest and also spend a little bit of extra time preparing for Virginia and devising up a nice game plan. Virginia had a game on Saturday. You come back. You have you have Sunday to kind of rest, lick your chops, get some treatment, and then the coaches are working on the game film and game plan, and players are getting some shots up, and then on Monday you really work on the game plan for Tuesday night. So it is what it is, right? Pitt had a great chance to scheme a little bit there, but they didn't really scheme a lot new. I mean, Tony Bennett and crew knew what Pitt was going to try to do. They've got guards who are really good. They've got a stretch four in Blake Henson, who is not like a lot of stretch fours. Jake Groves is a stretch four, a 6'9" guy who's about 205 pounds if he's anything. And Reed thin and he shoots threes and he shoots them well, 50%. This Henson kid is 6'8", about 230. That's what he's listed at. It looks like he might be a little heftier there. Got a lot of bounce, can shoot threes, and does his job pretty well. And he shoots 8.1 threes per game. At least he was shooting 8.1 threes per game coming in. He shot 13 against Virginia, so I'm sure that number went up. Obviously, over the season, maybe 8.2 now. But and he shot him at a 40% clip coming in. And so, what Pitt does and does well, you saw it the other night. Maybe you didn't see it. It's one of those things. I guess I got criticized by a reader today for diving too deep into the analytics, not just the analytics and numbers, but what I saw on the floor and trying to break it down for you. But the players and coaches talked about it after the game. What Pitt does so well is they run what are called ball screen separates. Look to me like slip screens. So maybe that's just a new term for it. Maybe whatever the case may be there. But essentially, where a ball handler runs to a screener, and you can either do the traditional pick and roll, traditional pick and pop, or a separate is where when the ball handler runs to the screener just immediately, as quickly as possible, separates. That's why they call them ball screen separates, and makes it hard for the defense when you have all those options, whether it be a pick where the ball handler just goes around the screen. And then you have to the two defenders have to either worry about the screener rolling to the basket or popping to the 3-point line. That's the pick and pop or pick and roll. Or that slip screen or ball screen separate where the ball handler never really gets a screen. It's almost like they call it refusing the screen, and that can really throw the defense off. Three options, and Virginia just never got rolling defensively, figuring it out. That was obvious all night long. And Pitt got a lot of open looks from three, made 14 of 32, just absurd numbers. They averaged 26 attempts per game coming in, but only shot 33.9%. I noted in one of my post-game columns, there have been games this year where 14 of 32 is the most makes they had in a game this season, but the percentage is not the best percentage. They were 10 for 20 in one game. They also had some games where, you're talking 5 for 25, 5 for 26, 11 for 36 in one game. So, if To me, the rule is if you're shooting 33% from three, the effective field goal percentage of that's 50%. Because if you're 1 for 3, you've got 3 points on 3 shots. That's 1 point per shot. So that's 50%. That's what you think there in terms of the math. And 14 of 32, I think that was 40, what was that, 43.8%? That's 42 points on 32 shots. That's like shooting 21 for 32. That's over 60%. Hey, take that, right? Um, and so, in fact, it's up in mid 60s, like 65% or so, just doing the quick math in my head. So, you take that. And if you can make those shots, now, if let's just do some other math here, 33.9%, that's either 10 or 11 out of 32 on those 32 shots. If they had a similar number of shots and were making their season long percentage, all of a sudden it's either a 1 point game Virginia or one or 2 point game Pitt if they shoot their season percentage. So they made some shots. They made some tough shots. They also made a lot of open shots. And Virginia never figured it out. So Blake Hinson ended up with 27 points. He was 5 of 13 from three. It felt like he was about 12 of 13 from three, but he was only 5 of 13 from three, which means the other guys were 9 of 19 from three. Guillermo Diaz Graham, no relation. I like to say, uh, I mean, out in my backyard, and I'm pointing literally to the UVA basketball court I got here, half court in my backyard. Um, I'm a 3 point shooter, but I'm not 7 feet tall either, and I'm also 51 years old, going on 52. But 7 foot center made 2 out of 3, but just the fact that Graham is a 36% shooter on the season from three is enough. Just his presence out there is enough to keep to keep the defense's attention, defender's attention on the guy when he's setting a screen or doing the slip screen, the ball screen separate, or whatever he's doing out there, as the case may be. Uh, and then you saw Pitt, get in the lane for some open mid-range shots. Just it felt like whatever Jeff Capel ordered up, they made the shots. And they only shot, again, they only shot 45% overall as a team. They were in the mid 40s from three, but they did enough. On Virginia's side of things, hey, criticize me if you want. The video story guy did. I wrote a mailbag column about that. It felt like to me Tony Bennett overreacted. Pitt was 5 of 8 from three in the first half, got a 22-15 lead, and Tony Bennett decided that they're getting too many open looks on these ball screen separates. He took Jordan Miner, starting center, out of the game. He brought him back in the second half to start the second half. Took him out to 17:30 mark. Miner never got back in. 8 minutes, not foul trouble, just 8 minutes on the game for Miner. And you notice after the game, it's one of those things, fog of war, I'll call it. When you're in the middle of it, whether you're playing it, coaching it, just watching it closely like I am, I'm not really. I mean, I got stat broadcast up. I've got the stats in front of me. Consult during the game, consult during timeouts, especially. But it never registered with me until afterward. My God, Pitt had a 35-25 overall rebound advantage. More importantly than that, they had 11 offensive rebounds. Virginia had 22 defensive rebounds. That's a 33% offensive rebound rate. And Pitt converted those 11 offensive rebounds into 13 second chance points. Virginia only had 2 offensive rebounds and 2 second chance points. 13-2. The margin is 11, and the margin of the game was 11. As much as our attention is on the 3 point shooting, the rebounding was just as consequential to the final outcome of this game. The rebounding was a factor and a function of Jordan Miner not being in the game. Miner played 8 minutes. I mentioned he had 4 points, a couple of dunks, and he didn't have a rebound in those 8 minutes. But he also wasn't out there to box out his guy and keep his guy from getting rebounds. And Virginia got dominated on the boards. Essentially, Virginia played this game as if it was the pre-Jordan Miner era. Which was the era when you had Blake Buchanan starting some at center. You had Jake Grove starting a lot at center. Two guys who, when Virginia was starting those two guys at center, Virginia was 11-5, right? And so the rebounding advantage could have been, in my mind, it was at least as significant as the 3 point shooting advantage for Pitt in this game. And my criticism there is, I think, and I wonder if Tony Bennett would cop to that later on. Certainly never would talk about it. No one would ask him about it because no one dares to ask these questions. That's why I don't go to the post-game press conferences because no one asks anything that's resembling a tough question of Tony, and I don't want to be the a-hole doing that. But the rebounding, he almost like he outcoached himself there in that sense. So, but that game's over. Virginia won't see Pitt again unless it's in Washington at the ACC tournament next month. But man, oh man, I know there was talk on press row. Wow, here's a blueprint for how to beat Virginia. Well, I mean, there's other blueprints too, but for to beat how to beat anybody. I don't know that there are a lot of teams that run offense the way Pitt runs offense, though. And to the credit of Jeff Capel, it's interesting. Someone came up to me before the game and said one of the TV announcers had gotten to a chat with a couple of the writers and said something to the effect of Pitt may win this game, but it won't be because of their coach. Basically saying Jeff Capel not a very good game coach. I've only watched them for 40 minutes once, and to the level, when I watch games a lot when it's not a Virginia game, I'm watching it more like a fan, and I'm watching it for edification. I'm kind of watching the ball, and that's to me the watching as a fan when you watch the ball and you just watch the ball and see what happens, where's it go, and that kind of thing. Not watching it analytically, which is, when I'm watching a game analytically, I'm kind of, I don't know, it's almost like I'm zoning out. I'm seeing the ball like in the foreground, but I'm watching the play develop, how the defenders are defending the play, how the offense is running, whether it's a screen or whether they're just, putting guys in the corner and running some pick and roll action, whatever they're doing, trying to see how everything develops and how guys defend it, that kind of thing. I have only watched Pitt play that way, from that perspective once this season for 40 minutes. Um, I can't believe this team was 1-5 at one point in the ACC. Now they've won six of their last seven. This Pitt team's pretty good. I like the talent they've got. It's not a very deep roster. You're capable only he goes to three guys on his bench. His bench doesn't really contribute an awful lot, but I like this team. I like this Pitt team a lot, and the way they play ball. I think that's a repeatable kind of thing. Um, what they did to Virginia the other night. You got to make shots. That can be tough. There's an old saying about the NBA, which I think should apply to all of basketball. It's a make or miss game. No matter what you do coaching wise, you guys, you can have the best defensive scheme in the world, and if the other team makes tough shots, doesn't matter, and you can have the best offensive scheme and run everything perfectly. And if you miss a shot, you missed a shot. Um, I don't think this was Virginia playing a good defensive game. Not just the fact that they gave up the points they gave up, the shots they gave up. The approach wasn't good. I think the coaching staff failed at addressing it properly. Took a guy out of the game in the form of Jordan Minor that should have been out there, and chalk it up. And that all said, Virginia was in this game for a long stretch, 30 minutes or so before Pitt pulled away in the last 10 minutes. And so now, okay, out of our system, you can't do anything about it. It's over. Um, Quick look at how the metrics were affected. The metrics were affected the way you figure. I kind of equated this for me. How many people out there trying to lose weight? I'm one of them. I want to run a marathon this year. I am 20 pounds above my marathon weight. I'm still in good shape for walking around shape. Uh, Using a boxing term now, I'm throwing all kinds of analogies and metaphors out there. But at 205, I don't want to run 26.2 miles at 205. I'd rather run at 180 or 185. So I'm trying to lose some weight. The marathon's not until November. I got plenty of time. But it seems like every time I lose, half pound or some days even up to a pound, you do that incrementally, and you over a 4 or 5 day period, you lose a couple of pounds, 3 pounds, and then you have a big dinner. And I still work out that day, right? I still run a few miles and I do all this stuff, and then it doesn't matter. All the gains you made in terms of losses, you're working towards your goal. Go away with one Mexican dinner. That's kind of what it feels like with Virginia and the metrics. Small incremental gains over that 8 game winning streak, getting yourself from being way off the bubble to back on the bubble to the right side of the bubble to well within the bubble. And it's not like Virginia now is on the wrong side of the bubble, but you lose one game to a pretty good team. Now, Pitt's metrics aren't as good, but this Pitt team looks to me like an NCAA tournament team. That game the other night felt like an NCAA tournament game. Um, Virginia dropped the average of the six um, metrics that the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee uses, in addition to just their eye test. But just the we can't measure the eye tests. We can measure the metrics. Virginia's average rank in the six last week was 29.3. When I say last week, before the Pitt game, after the win at Florida State Saturday night, it was 29.3. That's solid 7 to 8 seed. It's probably 7 seed territory. After the loss to Pitt, drop almost 8 full spots, 37.2 points, a 7.9 spot loss, if you want to say, down to 37.2. All of a sudden, from a solid 7, maybe 8, down to a 9, maybe a 10. And it's just one game, and there's lots still to play. Virginia's 10-4 in the ACC. That means there's 6 games still to play. Lots of room, opportunity, etc., to make up the difference here. But yeah, one loss is just like going out and having Mexican food, right? Yeah. I say that because man, I love you can't when they put the chips and salsa in front of you, you gotta eat it. Then you order your meal, and then you're at a Mexican restaurant. You're like, hey, give me the jumbo margarita already. So, um, anyway, that's what happened on Tuesday night. Virginia had a really good Mexican dinner. All right, let's look ahead to Wake Forest. Wake Forest on Saturday at noon. I mean, okay, we love finally having a Saturday again for the first time since early December. Saturday ACC game, first time since the Syracuse game way back when. It felt like the world was a different place back then. Um, but it's noon start. Man, oh man, what are they doing to us? I gotta like leave the house way earlier. That's crazy. And of course, the guys. I mean, you gotta they'll be out there shooting at 9:30, right? I mean, to get to get loose and all that kind of stuff. Wake Forest is the team coming to town. Spoiler alert, I don't like this matchup. And I don't know if we've already seen this once, and Virginia's already beaten a couple of teams, in fact, 2 teams of the 3 that had beaten them early in the season, back when things weren't going so well. That would be Notre Dame, NC State, and Wake. Notre Dame, Virginia avenged that loss. NC State, tough win, overtime, but won that game. And now Wake coming to town. Wake won the first matchup 66-47. Now, that was the first game that Jordan Minor started. And, I have been one, and I don't know if I've been the only one, but I know I've been loud about how that is what the difference to this season has been. When you're the 11-4 start, I should correct myself from earlier, because he started the Wake game. That's the loss that dropped Virginia to 11-5. The difference between that 11-4 team and the 19-5 team before the loss Tuesday night, was Jordan Minor. Now, not because he was scoring. I mean, he had a couple double-digit games. He had 16 in the Virginia Tech game, for example. But the offensive side, it was what he did defensively, and also what he did in terms of the rotation. Because all of a sudden, with Minor as your starting center, giving you 20, 22 minutes a game, that meant Blake Buchanan could come off the bench. He's no longer having to think, hey, am I going to start? Am I going to have to play 25 minutes? Or what am I going to do? Buchanan could settle in as the backup. He, getting 12 to 15 minutes per game. He'd steal a few minutes with either Ryan Dunn or Jake Groves at the center spot instead of, Groves playing 30 minutes as the starting center at 6'9", 200 and whatever he is, not much. And you have a stout guy in Minor to kind of anchor your back line. Then that allows even more freedom for Ryan Dunn, the 6'8", 215-pound, what he's listed at, just dynamic athlete, to be the shot blocker that he is. Minor is, I mean, he blocks shots one-on-one when he's defending, but he's much more of a help at the rim, sort of offside blocking, off his guy blocking. And he can do that more effectively if he knows that there's a guy back behind him who can, box his guy out and help get the rebound when he's out of position if he doesn't get the block, or if he gets the block but only gets a partial. So Minor was a key here. But Minor in that first game, and he had a good game in that first game. He had 9 points, 5 rebounds, block shot, 22 minutes, battle head to head with the 7-foot Gonzaga transfer Efton Reed. But even with Minor playing good defense, Virginia in that loss at Wake did not play at all good defensively and played even worse offensively. Let's talk about the offensive numbers first. Virginia shot 31.6% from the floor. And it's uglier than that when you get into it. 4 of 14 on shots at the rim. Um, it was 4 of 12 from three and 8 of 31 on twos. 2-point jumpers, I should say. 8 of 31. I mean, okay, 8 is not bad. 31 attempts from the mid-range. That's inability to get to the rim, inability to get open shot because 2-point shots, 2-point jump shots are going to be contested. You're closer to you're closer to the rim. As a result, you're closer to defenders. Also, I mean, 3-point shots often you're in rhythm. You're often stationary. And you can get step into a shot, kind of get your form down. 2-point jumpers are often, you're off the dribble, you're elevating, you got a guy in front of you, you might land on somebody, and there's all this stuff going on. So everybody shoots a lower percentage from two on jumpers than they do from three. It's just what it is. Good shooters, and we'll talk about Isaac McNeely in a second. So 4 of 14 at the rim, 4 of 12 from three, 8 of 31 uh from on 2-point jumpers. It's just not good. It's just not good. Um, it's just not good. You're not getting good offense. I mean, it's not just the results. The results are often the function of running good offense, and they just didn't run good offense. And it would not be so bad if it was because Wake was just this dominant defensive team, but they're not. 43rd nationally. I mean, that's out of 362 teams. That's top 11% or so. But the next game out, they got burned for 83 in a loss to NC State, and they've given up an average of 73.8 points per game since that win over Virginia back in January. So this is not an NC State, or excuse me, a Wake Forest team that is a dominant defensive team. And that day, though, Virginia could not get anything going. Looking at the Wake lineup, we'll focus on the key guys. The other Gonzaga transfer, Hunter Salas. I mean, I read a piece about Gonzaga and their struggles this year. Now, they beat Kentucky last week. Kentucky now has played itself back towards the bubble. Gonzaga is trying to play its way up to the bubble. Gonzaga is not having the kind of season that you're used to out of Mark Few's program, and a reason why is Hunter Salas left. And the article that I read was written from a perspective of, wow, Gonzaga losing guys. They lost Efton Reed and Hunter Salas, but Salas is a guy that was expected to do a lot offensively for Gonzaga this year, and instead he's doing a lot offensively for Wake Forest this year. 18.7 points a game, 49.9% from the field, 40.3% from three. And boy, did we feel that in that loss in Winston-Salem last month. He was 8 of 13 from the field, 5 of 8 from three, 21 points in that game. Ate us up. Kevin Miller, I know he's got a nickname. I think it's Boopy. I'm just going to go with Kevin Miller. Good numbers on the season, 15.7 points, 3.9 assists. And he had good numbers against Virginia, 14 points and 7 assists in 38 minutes in that game. And it just felt like it was more than that. I mean, it's just one of those things. Felt like he had even more of an impact than those numbers would suggest. And those are pretty good numbers. Two other guys on this Wake roster averaging double digits. Andrew Carr, a 6'10 senior, 14 points and 6.8 rebounds per game. Another guy who can stretch you, 54% from the field, but 40.3% from three. Man, 6'10 guy. And 6'4 junior Cam Hildreth, 14 points a game, 45% from the field, 36.7% from three. Used to be a guy who could just back you down and score that way. He can do that now. He can hit threes, so he's even better. In the first game with Virginia, Carr had 12 points and 12 rebounds. Hildreth was the guy who had the quiet day. That was an afternoon. I don't want to say night. 7 points, 3 of 11 from the field, 1 of 6 from three. So Virginia did a good job on him, but not on anybody else. Reed is the other starter. The 8.8 points, 8.1 rebounds, 1.5 blocks per game. And in the first game, he had 9 points, 8 rebounds, 5 blocks. Had a big game defensively. So how does Virginia match up here? So I noted Jordan Minor played 22 minutes in that first one. He only got 8 minutes the other night. I think that's That's the reason we lost that game. I know everybody, it's easy to look at 14 of 32 and say that's why we lost the game. I think if the rebounding is where it needed to be, Virginia wins that game. Um, can't go back and fix it. So Wake in that game down in Winston-Salem, in addition to dominating Virginia on the defensive end, Wake's defensive end, they shot 50% for the game, 10 of 21 from three, 5 of 8 from three from Hunter Salas being a part of that, but the other guys were 5 of 13. Um, and Virginia's going to need a better defensive game from Ryan Dunn. Dunn is, I mean, he's the guy that, you hear this and then you say, how is this possible? And I tell you that it doesn't matter how it's possible, it's going to happen. If he decides to go out in the draft this year as a sophomore, he'll be a lottery pick, late lottery pick, but still a lottery pick. And it's because of his defense. And yet on defense the other night, he got torched. Synergy Sports is one of the websites I subscribe to get deep analytics numbers. Just to, there's a number for everything. And among the numbers that Synergy gives you is what a guy gives up on defense, what the guy he's guarding does. And in that game, Ryan gave up 16 points on 6 of 10 shooting. This is for a guy who, not too long ago, I haven't looked the numbers up today, but I was quoting this for a friend or just talking on the phone the other night. And Ryan, season long, he was giving up something like 3.9 points a game on 25.8% shooting or something like that. It was 16 points on 6 of 10 shooting in that loss. Blake Henson really, he owned it. He owned Virginia, but he really owned Ryan Dunn in that game. Going to need Dunn to do a much better job. I would expect him getting the matchup with Salas. That's where I put him. 6'5" Salas. I make him have to work around Dunn and go through Dunn and go over Dunn, and that's hard to do. Dunn gave up 10 points in the Wake game, and so a month ago. So Dunn's going to need to step up. Reese Beekman. Now this is I'll note this that Beekman had a good defensive game in the Wake loss. Offensively in that game, 10 points, 4 assists, quiet day. On the season, averaging 14.6 assists. His last 5, 18.2 points, 5.4 assists. Reese is really, I mean, I noted it the other night. I kind of just blurted it out loud on Press Row a couple of the times when Reese was kind of just taking over. It felt like a Malcolm Brogdon moment. I have been thinking Malcolm Brogdon with this kid for 4 years in terms of, his athleticism, his ability to get to the rim, his shooting certainly is at 4 years ago, 3 years ago when he was a freshman was nowhere near where Brogdon was even as a freshman himself way back when. But he's grown into it. 29.7% from three. He's respectable for Beekman, but the one thing that was missing from Beekman's game was what Malcolm Brogdon's will. Malcolm Brogdon athletically was that one knock on him when he went after his 5 years at UVA, including the redshirt sophomore year, I guess it was. He had a redshirt as a sophomore because of the foot injury. Was the lack of athleticism. That's why he fell to the second round of the draft. He's still playing ball now, making a lot of money doing so because of his smarts, but also his will. He's a guy that wants to win. And he wants to win more than just about everybody else in the NBA or anywhere. And the one thing that seemed missing from Beekman was that he was too deferential for 3 years. He deferred to Kihei Clark. And this year it's his team. In the last 5 games, he's played like he doesn't want his career to end until it has to end. And so we're going to need that kind of game out of him on Saturday with this game. Also picking up offensive slack of late, Isaac McNeely, the sophomore. He's averaging 12.5 points per game on the season, 15.6 points per game in the last 5. And I want to point out this stat. I talked about the 2-point mid-range shooting versus 3-point shooting. Isaac is one of the top 5 in the country in 3-point shooting on the season. But for the longest time, his knock was mid-range shooting was abysmal. He was in the first 19 games of the season, his first 19 games, he had to miss a game early in the season. He was 21 of 64 on mid-range jumpers. 21 of 64 is 32.8%. Um, a big difference for him in the last 5 games, 13 of 25 on mid-range jumpers, 52%. Um, if he's coming off those screens in the mover blocker, the sides offense, if he's coming off those screens and is a threat to hit that 12 to 15-foot jumper, if he's going to make 52% of those, I mean, that gives him another option. Then it makes it easier for him to flatten out if his defender is going to try to cheat under the screen, he can flatten out to the 3-point line where he's 46.7%. We'll take those as well. But also then if he's going to get doubled off of the screens in the lane, that creates a passing lane for Jordan Minor or Ryan Dunn, or a passing lane out to Jake Groves on the 3-point line. Him making those shots makes him just a completely different player, and he's making them. So credit to him. In season, it's hard to develop something new in the middle of a season. That's something that happens after a season. He's give him credit. He's doing well to improve his game. The a key to this game, I think the key to this game, in addition to Ryan Dunn in defense on Hunter Salas, is going to be what Virginia can do down low. Wake goes big across the front line. I mentioned Efton Reed and Andrew Carr. Reed is 7 feet tall. Carr is 6'10". They have a backup 6'10". I got to find his first name here. Keller. Oh, I left. Yeah, I left it out. I have to go back and edit the story. But the backup 6'10" Keller, his first name is a mystery, but we'll edit the story so that I've got that fixed up. But he plays those three guys. He plays the 7-footer, the 2 6'10" guys. Average 71.7 minutes per game when you combine their numbers. What that says is essentially Steve Forbes puts two big guys, a 7-footer and a 6'10" guy, or two 6'10" guys on the floor for 36 of the 40 minutes. He's got two bigs for 36 of the 40 minutes on an average per game. He's still obviously he's playing, a big guy for the other 4 minutes, but he's got two big guys out there the bulk of the game, 90% of the game. Makes it incumbent on Virginia in this one because Ryan Dunn at 6'8", he's a light guy. I mean, he's an athletic guy, but he's not a bruiser, say the least. Jake Groves, keep talking about Reed thin. He's 6'9", 200 and whatever. He's a 3-point shooter at 6'9". He's got to bang some. And Jordan Minor's going to need to have a game. He avoid foul trouble. All three of these guys, all four of the guys, throw Dunn in there. Had to avoid foul trouble and body up if they want to stay in contact in this game. So I say all that to say I don't like his matchup. It's a tough one. It's a tough one for Virginia. The fact that Wake goes so big, they've got two really good. I mean, actually three really good guards. I shouldn't take anything away from Cam Hildreth. I like Cam Hildreth's game too. I mean, it's pretty. I like this Wake roster. And what they can do. Not very deep. The bench guys don't have a lot of punch. So, I mean, Virginia's side, okay. We always think of the game through the lens of the Virginia team. From the Wake perspective, yeah, they got to avoid foul trouble too. I mean, there's not much in terms of a backup for Miller at the point guard spot, for example. So maybe if Reese can make him work a little bit, get a couple cheapies early, that gets Wake out of the game a little bit. If Virginia can get if Miller has to go to the bench in the first half with foul trouble, that's picking time right there for Virginia. Get one of the bigs in foul trouble. I don't know. I don't know if I have a preference. Reed defensively, Carr offensively. If Dunn can keep Salas in check to some degree. I mean, there's a lot of things that can work here for Virginia too, but we've seen it once, and Wake played it so well the first time. The game's in Charlottesville. It's not a must win for Virginia. It's more of a must win for Wake at 8-5. This is a quad one game for Wake on the road at Virginia. So a chance for Wake to get a resume building win. And they're on the wrong side of the bubble right now. Virginia's still within the bubble. The loss or two certainly, and Virginia is in bad shape, but right now not. But yeah, these are two teams that need a win. Wake more desperately so. Virginia would love to get, the W here. And I think, I mean, if, I'm kind of like Tony. I don't, he talks a lot about what next game is, whatever the next game is. I think the next game is Monday night with Virginia Tech down in Blacksburg. So another tough play. That's a tough place to play. We'll talk about that on the weekend. But get the win in this one, and you can see what happens from there. As much as I don't like the matchup, the computers do for Virginia. ESPN's BPI, the Basketball Power Index, and Bart Torvik each have Virginia as a 2-point favorite, and Ken Palm and Evan Maya have Virginia as a 1-point favorite. So I went out of my way to look for four things just to see, I'm going to look to see if there's anybody with a counter perspective. And that's what the verdict was. So, okay, that's a Saturday noon tip. Uh, of course, we'll be there. We being AFP, we AFP being me and Scott German. We'll be sitting most likely next to Jerry Radcliffe. They kind of moved our seats around the other day. Doug Downey for a season and a half has been sitting to my right. They pushed him a row back and left a seat to my right empty. It's just weird, you know. It's like, I mean, I like the extra room, but I also like chatting with Doug. Um, but yeah, we'll be there on Saturday at noon. We'll be there before noon. And of course, the around 2:30 or so, I should have the first story up after the game. We'll have a lot of post game stuff. Both the that first recap like thing, then the what else? Then the five observations. With an early start, I imagine I'll get time for the when it's a night game, the perspectives from Coach Bennett and the two players they give us usually end up being the next day, but I'll probably have time to do it that night as well. Maybe even get a podcast in that night too. And listen, it's gonna be a long, fun day. Hopefully, it's a long, fun day no matter what, but a long, fun day. It's even a more fun day when there's a win to write and talk about. So anyway, that's what we'll be doing on Saturday. Then we'll get you ready for next week. Big week with Virginia Tech and North Carolina next Saturday, right? Um, Got to get the win here first. Hey, if you have any questions for me, any comments, any criticisms, if you don't think I'm qualified to do any of this, you can tell me. I mean, that's fine. Please email me at chris@augustafreepress.com.